Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everyone. This is for anybody that owns a business, or if you're the head of an organization, maybe a CEO, managing, or you're leading a team. We're going to talk about how to do that more effectively as a leader, as a manager, maybe even coach your team. He coaches both. And he's with us today. Looking forward to talking with the president of Executive Coaching Concepts, Willy Steiner, joins us on the program. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too, because it's challenging when you're in charge of others, making sure your thoughts get to them, making sure the concepts, the values of the company. Maybe we should start here today with what is a leader? How do you define a leader, maybe that compared to a manager?
Well, I think what I will do then is refer to the back of my business card. And I have a quotation from a gentleman, Peter Drucker, who was one of the leading management theorists of the second half of the last century. And what he said was, management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. In other words, when you identify what to do, then you work on the how-tos and the resources and the tools, whatever.
Sure.
Leadership is a much higher level. You got to figure out where you're going to go, what strategy you're going to pursue. And it's a much higher order. Everybody thinks, well, I'm a leader. Well, no, sometimes you're just a manager. And my experience has been that you've got to know how to manage all the kind of key things. And in my organizational work, I've really come to agree that there's really four key things that managers need to do. They've got to manage their time well, because it's a very precious resource and you can squander it in no time. Number two, how do you communicate? And communication is visual, verbal, and vocal. And you got to understand all those kinds of things. And because what you mean to say may not, kind of come across as well. So being sure you focus on that. You've got to build relationships. Building relationships never stops. Part of your goal is to network your entire life and career, because you have to be able to find other people that do it differently or can give you some suggestions. You can help them out in other times. And what I've seen, the most painful thing I've seen is in organizations where I've had to be involved in corporate downsizing or whatever. You have some really great people that have been great contributors to organization. All of a sudden, their job's eliminated. They've done nothing to try to connect with people and build that network. To a certain extent, they're kind of out of luck. I mean, it's really makes that all a lot harder rather than just pick up your phone and say, hey, this is what's going on. You have any ideas? And a lot of times I did that when I lost my last corporate job. And fortunately, I called one of my former people that I work with, and that's how I got to Chicago. I had an opportunity to come up here for an interview a week later. And the last thing is change. I read something recently that the pace of change that we're dealing with right now is the slowest it will ever be for the rest of our lives. That's pretty terrifying, because it's moving pretty fast according to my old butt. And so, yeah, I think those are those elements that you've got to do to manage yourself through them, but also then to work with your staff on. And then you get to the leadership issue, which is strategically, where do you want to go? Tactically, maybe how do you get there? So that's a difference for me. Make sense?
Absolutely. The relationship one. Let's put the microscope on that one, because it's kind of foundational. If you don't have those connections with people, and a lot of times it's viewed as, yeah, I got connections. I can take care of it. It's not that. It's you're connected to your kids. You're connected to your friends. It's a different type of connection. How do you foster those, call them those business connections, those business relationships? Is it as simple as reaching out occasionally, sending an email, a text, or whatever?
Well, first of all the people that you work with in your life, okay, some of them, very few of them are ultimately going to be your friends. They have nice relationships with them, but friendships, that's a kind of a rarer thing. But in those people that you recognize that you enjoy working with, that they have a level of expertise on something that you admire, put their name and their phone number down and find a way to keep in touch. That's what I do with my website. I get to a lot of people that way. So I think that's one of the most important things about, being able to, and then just continue to develop that relationship. Sometimes people go, well, that's kind of a pain in the butt because, I don't have time to call everybody all the time. Well, that's true to an extent, but whenever you get a call, are you kind of just having a hard time with people reaching out to you and asking? Now, again, within the context of there's a connection between you two. No, most of the time people are flattered to be called. You can't do it too often. You've got to, be careful about it. But in that regard, that's what relationships are all about. I have relationships from when I was in grade school that I maintain.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
people,
Same.
some people don't.
Yeah. I'm going to share this because it just popped in my head, but somebody a couple of months ago, a very, very effective real estate broker. He's also a coach for real estate.
Mhm.
He told me this little trick. He'll just send an email or a text to past clients or even people that he knows, and he'll say, "Yeah, I just want to wish you a happy birthday."
Mhm.
It's not their birthday. He doesn't even know when their birthday is.
Okay, that's even easier to a certain extent.
And then they reach back and say, "Oh, it's not my birthday, but I appreciate it." Like, "Oh, I had it down here. When is your birthday?" Right away, he got their birthday, goes into a database, and he's automatically following up when it is their birthday. But who doesn't love somebody to say happy birthday? So you've made a more personal connection, plus you've gotten that information. And it's easy. You could send it at any time. You could even auto-generate all those
Yeah.
emails or texts to go out. It just popped in my head. I thought it was a little clever.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that. One of my college roommates, today is his 71st birthday.
Oh, wow.
And I gave him a call and we chatted for half an hour. He was just glad to catch up. He's
Super cool.
been a friend for a long time, and people love to be reached out to and just recognized to a certain extent that, hey, there's somebody that's still interested. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, cared about. We like to know that we're cared about. And it's one thing is business, but when you hit the personal aspect of it, do you feel, Willie, that we are all of us we're all leaders. We're all leaders in some regards. Aren't we leading our lives?
Some people more than others. But yeah,
Right?
some people do it with not much forethought or whatever. But yeah, we're the only ones that have the responsibility for us leading our lives. And to do that, you have to be sure that you've got your mind, scanning the environment the whole time to try to network, communicate with people, manage change, the things I just talked about.
Sure.
They all matter.
Um, can anybody be a higher level leader? Or is that only for certain people with certain skills and mindsets?
I think there is a narrowing of the pyramid.
Mm,
Because some of the things that you have to do about like building relationships or speaking in front of groups, things like that or whatever, they're just uncomfortable for people. Can they learn it? Yeah, to a great extent. I had one of my clients, and at that firm, the person had been in charge of one large group. He was promoted to the CEO, and he had never been a CEO before. And all he had been an investment banker. So all that's who I ever talked to was investment bankers and their customers. Now he's talking to this whole organization. Turns out he really wasn't a very good at the podium. And my client at the time who worked for him, who was great at that, he'd been in the theater and whatever, he helped him immensely to develop and round out that element of his style. And he
mm.
became an outstanding speaker. So, there are ways
Wow.
to depend on others. Yep.
So you work with group scenarios and also one-on-one, is that right?
Yeah, I like to work with individuals and then help them with their group too. That's and it's always I like to be sure it's all connected within the organization. I had a client of mine who called me up and he goes, "Hey, how long did you work for the firm that he worked for?" Which, by the way, was one of Fortune's top 100 places to work in the United States for 16 years in a row.
Wow.
He said, "How many people did you work with there?" I go, Bryce, I don't know, but I can figure out because of the way I have my notes. I called him back. And in 16 years, I had coached 99 people in that organization. It was a real moneymaker for me, but I really love the organization. And, I had to be sure that people trusted that I would keep things confident and that kind
Sure.
of stuff. But it was wonderful.
What do you find that many CEOs, C-suite executives, those who are leaders or have the potential to be, or maybe they have their eye on that, what do you think most of them are dealing with?
Craziness. The world is, I mentioned, the world's moving so fast. And rules are, getting changed all the time. It's really tough to be able to stay on top. And so if you're going to do that, you just rely on yourself. No, you've got to have that network or the people in your team
Hmm.
that are kind of focused on doing what you're kind of working together towards a goal. But that it takes communication, it takes reinforcement, it takes, trying to help people understand what they do and how that complements the overall goal. And that reinforcement makes people go, okay, yeah, that's why I'm doing this. Because a lot of times people just don't really understand, why are we doing this again? And that's the leader's job, to be sure to maintain that kind of connection for them.
Well, it's a great point that things are moving fast and crazy because we're all connected. And if you don't harness the power of the connection, others are doing it. It's like the woman that gets all the attention from one guy and not another one. Well, which way is she going?
Mhm,
Because she appreciates the attention. Um, on your website, you talk about in one of the blogs the practice of gratitude.
mhm.
And I'm pivoting in that direction just for a moment about the mindset that we should adopt if we want to take our careers and even our lives to a different level. Why, in your mind, why does gratitude play such a major role?
Well, to a certain extent, I think it has to do with the fact that it is expressed much less frequently than it should.
Mm,
It doesn't have to be like this huge prize or this big something that you get. It's like an idea, or it's a reinforcement, a thank you or whatever. Gratitude for the small things is just as important as the really big things. And it's got to be a part of your nature that you have gratitude for what other people do for you, suggestions, whatever it might be. And that's why I say build that into your mindset. I have a friend of mine from high school, and one of his sons changed jobs, and he said, "Could you help him work with him?" I go, "Yeah, sure." The first thing I told him to do, it's from a fairly wealthy family, but he was going to be going and trying to go into a different field, and it was going to be a real challenge for him. I said, "One of the things I'd like you to do is keep a gratitude diary, and every day write down something you realize that you are really grateful for. I mean, you've had a nice life. Your parents provided with you very well, but think about that. And that's going to give you personal reinforcement to do what you're doing, and courage and things to keep going on." And he called me a couple of weeks ago. He says, "That was one of the best things I ever tried. It's easy to do, much easier than I thought."
I do it.
Oh, good. I think it's great.
Yeah, I didn't do it the last couple of days over the weekend, just got busy. Somebody told me this recently. What I do is in the morning, I'll just write the date. I'll write down I am grateful for. I'll list three things. They could be anything. Could be a cup of coffee. Grateful for this, the way it makes me feel. I don't do caffeine. It's my happy moment. I'm
Hmm.
grateful to the growers of the coffee beans, the
Hmm.
people who package it, the barista, and all that. And then somebody told me to change it up. I'll just share it because I thought it was made sense to me. He said, instead of doing it in the morning, he said, I'll bet you're rushing around, aren't you? And that's like before you walk out the door, you're like, oh yeah, last minute thing. Let me write down. So you're not really processing it. He said, do it before bed. But before you do it, put your feet on the floor and ground yourself. Write those three things down, sleep on it. He said, in 14 days, you'll realize you'll start sleeping better and your life will start changing in a more positive direction. Haven't started that yet, but that's next on my radar.
I think it's a great suggestion within the gratitude concept. It's a really, I think, a very effective way of trying to do it. I'm going to have to do that myself.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems to make sense. And what the heck, right? We're writing it down anyway, so why not change when we do it?
Mhm.
That mindset mentality with gratitude. Any other things along that the mindset territory there that you find is impactful to help people move their lives forward?
Well, one of the things is that I think it's one of the bigger challenges we have is I mentioned the concept of change. And I always tell my clients, when you're talking about a change, you got to talk about what's changing. Got to be very clear on that. Because if the leader doesn't define it for he and his team, others will, and that may be a bad message. Number two, what's going to change and what's not going to change. It's very rarely that things just change 100%. So define the piece of it that's going to really change. And the thing about that is, and the people, oh, well, I know all the rest of that, so I guess I can adapt to this part. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, gotta throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we're starting all over. So those are key things that you got to think a little bit about, and then the fact that change is just always going to be here.
Accept it.
Mm-hmm.
In my journey, I run by one of a number of different things, but one of them is nothing surprises me anymore. It just doesn't. And I used to get rattled sometimes, like, oh my God, look at that. Like, all right, well, on, keep moving, keep moving.
It's kind of like, oh, that's interesting. I've never dealt with that, and be excited about it.
Right.
Not have all the answers, but turn the negative into a positive with just a change of perspective a little bit.
100%. I'm glad you said that. It's more about the mentality that you have. Something goes wrong, your job or whatever, instead of dwelling on it like, oh man, look at that. I can't believe that happened to me. Flip it and make it an opportunity. Well, now that I'm not doing that, I have more time to do this, and maybe that'll lead to something. Now, earlier you said that there's a difference between a manager and a leader. Can a manager be a leader?
Well, they are a leader to a certain extent. I mean, because they've got to lead their function and using the resources in that area and be sure that they're aligned with the goals and the direction of the organization. That's
Sure.
all leadership. The higher order stuff we're talking about is like it's really, where are we going? Where's the company going to go? What's going on in the larger world where we have to strategically think about a way to approach it. People say, strategy, what's strategy? Well, sometimes I like to say strategy, according to the Supreme Court, is, well, the definition of pornography is we'll know it when we see it. And so,
Seriously?
yeah, that's where I read it from. We'll know it when we see it. Well, you hope that you're changing the direction or considering that in an organization, you go way past that. We'll know it when we see it.
That just, and it could be anything, but
Yeah.
that subject is subjectionable to everyone. It could be a person in a bathing suit. Somebody could say, well, to me, that's pornography. I knew it when I saw it. I can't believe Supreme Court, that's how they define it.
Yeah. I heard that years ago.
Unbelievable. Wow. I never write on the negative, but sometimes it can be impactful. Can you think back to a leader, somebody who was in that position that wasn't effective as a leader? And I'm talking about your personal, your career, not people necessarily you worked with, but things that you experienced and why you look back now or even then and say, they're not a great leader. And here's why. What would the why be?
Well, the why is hard to figure out because how do you put yourself in their shoes when you don't think that way? But one of the reasons I got into coaching 27 years ago was I was at a very senior level in a really good international organization. And the CEO called me up and he says, hey, I found a really good person for this key tech job we have. I go, oh, great. Send me the paperwork. And it was this woman. She had a kind of a really good background. They'd kind of worked at the same place. I noticed that. And I said, I'll call her up. And I did. And she seemed to know the right buzzwords. She was in sync with what the goal was. So I invited her in. And she got in. I was very nice when I took her down to the CEO. And having the guy that was interviewing her, who was a technical expert, comes into my office, knocks on the door. He says, Houston, we have a problem. She's not a technical expert. She's his ex-secretary. And she didn't know squat about it. And so it fell to me then to have to say to him, well, sir, she was really nice, but we've got a couple other key people that we think might even do a better job of this. After that, my name was mud. I got pushed off the strategic planning committee. I had all sorts of stuff. And it just made it very clear to me when I talked to my boss, she goes, Willie, name and number.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think it was that individual's relationship with that person?
Oh, hell
Like
yeah.
the secretary? Yeah.
Yeah.
Playing favorites or whatever.
Yeah. Because later on, yeah, it just got
Yeah.
to be, and I kind of respected the guy. He had a good background, and I interacted with him very nicely. But this is something I guess I pushed the envelope and didn't work out well. But I was
Wow.
being honest about what happened, and he wasn't. And so that was enough of that. I didn't want to work in his organization anymore.
Right there. I've had similar situations and where I just left. It didn't feel right. And even comes to mind is somebody who was in a management position, but the leader of the company, and would always make it feel like, come on, your door's always open. You can come in here to talk about anything. That wasn't the case. That no one wanted to go into what we would call the corner pocket. That's where it was located. No one wanted to go in there. And as it turned out later, um, a couple of years after that, something major happened within this organization, and he should have stood behind the employees because they were doing it for the greater good of all. He didn't. He threw him under the bus and just took himself notches down and then was gone shortly thereafter. They replaced him with somebody else who was better, but still not honest in terms of the vibe. Now the person in this position, and I still work with this company. I don't work for them. Um, he's great. You just get this. He's very real. He's if he doesn't know the answer, he tells you. He's let's go have a cup of coffee and talk about anything. You feel something coming from him, and I believe that also makes a good leader. It's what you're feeling, their energy that they're putting out there, that they're being transparent. All the others never felt that. This one, everybody says the same thing about him. They like him.
It's that ability to create connection, because you align with them not only because of where they're taking the company, but because of the values that they're espousing about how we're going to do that.
Sure.
And if that's the case, that's a home run to be able to have both of those.
And one thing just clicked into my mind here. Stay curious, because this individual who nobody knows all the answers. So he very often says, "Oh, let's talk about that." I'm like, that's an interesting thought, or let me look into that. He doesn't, he's honest about it. Others would, I've stand up there, I know everything. I know everything. I got it. I'll take care of it. Thank you very much. See you at 2 p.m. It's radically different when you meet people like that. But you know what? He's been around. Maybe he got some coaching. I don't know. How does somebody engage with you, Willie? How does that start?
Well, right now, when I had my own business and it was humming, I would market quite a bit. And I've had about 800 clients over the years
Wow.
on 4 different continents. So a lot of it's by word of mouth. And as time has gone along, I've kind of backed off my full scale kind of work. I still work fairly much, but I get my stuff all funneled to me now by referral. I don't even market anymore. So I work for the Center for Creative Leadership in their senior programs, get referrals there. I live just a few blocks from Northwestern University here in Evanston. I work with their executive education. And then I still have a smattering of my former clients. I'm going to one tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to meet with 3 new clients there.
Hmm.
So that's the way it works. There is a reputation that I have that I still, guard cautiously. And I kind of that's how it works for me.
Wow. Well, you just identified one key point here, and that goes back to what we started talking about, the relationships, because you
Mhm.
maintain those relationships. And now, kind of rhetorical, but now I really see it in action for you, how important and beneficial it is. You just stay connected.
Mhm.
Wow. Your
And
website.
when you do what you say, when you say you're going to do it, that makes a big difference for people because a lot of people don't get that kind of service and whatever. And I'm a very transparent, honest guy. That gets me pretty far in this world.
Totally got you. How do we find you? What's your website?
It is executive coaching concepts, all one word, .com.
And if somebody has some questions, they want to reach out, is it a free consult? Just kind of
Sure.
pick your brain.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah, and my email is Coach Willy, CoachWilly. My ancestors were Austrian, at ECCleader.com, Executive Coaching Concept Leader.com, ECCleader.com.
Willie, great talking with you today. Love your freshness in all of this, and right down to the gratitude level. And I'm grateful we got together.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
Appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the mytuner-radio, online radio box, and simpleradio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.